Coming up on Network Africa. Gabon Johnson leader General Brice Nguema turns down presidential salary. U.S. clinches deal with Egypt to allow aid into Gaza. Plus, $30 tons of aid arrives Egypt from Venezuela. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We start with news that Gabon's military leader, General Brice Nguema, is rejecting a salary as president and will only receive a wage as commander of the Republican Guard. A statement by the junta spokesperson explains that General Nguema took the decision because he's aware of the social emergencies and many expectations of the Gabonese people. Apart from renouncing his salary as president, General Nguema promises to reduce public spending by also slashing lawmakers' allowances, eliminating political funds and cutting session allowances. The latest move is seen as an attempt to restore the people's confidence in the country's leadership. Elsewhere, U.S. President Joe Biden has secured a deal with Egypt to deliver limited aid to Gaza to ease a humanitarian crisis amid the Israel-Hamas war. Mr. Biden praised Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for agreeing to open the Rafah border crossing to allow 20 trucks carrying humanitarian aid into Gaza, pledging that the U.S. would get people trapped in Gaza out. Mr. Biden had been visiting Tel Aviv, where he affirmed that Israel had a right to hit back for Hamas' attack that triggered the fighting. The U.S. president believes Israel was badly victimized, though he cautioned against being consumed by rage.
I wanted to make sure there was a vehicle, a mechanism that this could happen quickly. And so I've been on the phone for the last, we've been on the ground a while. That's why we haven't taken off with El-Sisi. I don't think I was on that long. It was about probably half an hour. And both my team here was with me. He agreed that what he would do is open the gate on to do two things. One, let up to 20 trucks through to begin with. Satterfield, my ambassador, is down there in Cairo now. He's going to coordinate this. He has my authority to do what is needed to get it done. They're going to patch the roads. They have to fill in potholes to get these trucks through. And that's going to occur. They expect it will take about 8 hours tomorrow. So there may be nothing rolling through until, what's today? What's the track of days? Thursday? Wednesday? Probably until Friday.
And there's the Rafah
for this purpose. Not to allow a lot of people out, but to open it up for this purpose.
For humanitarian assistance.
For the trucks to be able to get through.
And is that just
trucks? Up to 20 trucks. This has been a very blunt negotiation I've had. And so we want to get as many of the trucks out as possible. There's, I guess, 150 or something there. Not all of them will go. The first tranche, if there's a second tranche, see how it goes. The commitment is, if in fact they cross the border, the UN is going to be on the other side. But the point being that if Hamas confiscates it or doesn't let it get through, or just confiscates it, then it's going to end. Because we're not going to be sending any humanitarian aid to Hamas if they're going to be confiscated. That's the commitment that I've made. And so the bottom line is that El-Sisi deserves some real credit because he was very accommodating. And quite frankly, as everyone I've spoken to thus far since this trip began.
Meanwhile, China has put out a statement appreciating Egypt's efforts to coordinate and ease a mounting humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip amid the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian Islamist group Hamas. Speaking at a regular news briefing in Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said China was shocked by the Gaza hospital blasts and strongly condemned the explosion, which killed hundreds of Palestinians. China adds that Beijing is willing to work with Arab governments for a lasting solution to the conflict. Well, dozens of boxes with 30 tons of aid for Gaza has arrived in Egypt courtesy of the Venezuelan government. Footage from Al Arish airport shows Red Crescent volunteers loading the boxes onto vehicles. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro pressed for the establishment of a humanitarian aid corridor to help the local population during a phone conversation with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas on Sunday. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil said in a televised interview with the state-run channel that the aid contains non-perishable food, water, first aid kits, medical supplies and power plants. Let's get more on this. Joining us on the show is VOA correspondent Edward Yeranian in Cairo, the capital of Egypt. Hello, Edward.
Hello, Joka.
Right, so what does it look like at the border between Gaza and Egypt today? What is your reading of the situation?
The trucks are lined up on the Egyptian side, waiting to go in, and we're hearing that the decision is to let them in tomorrow. So it's difficult to predict. We've been hearing that kind of statement for the last week, or maybe 5 days. And political leaders are saying everything and its opposite. So it's difficult to know where the real choke points are. But I guess the Israeli Prime Minister has said it better than anyone, that he doesn't want aid going into the hands of Hamas. So that's why they are trying to hold things up. And Israel has reportedly damaged part of the terminal. And I can't see the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing and the Palestinian correspondents, which are pretty much under the control of Hamas, are being very careful not to show what's on that side of the border. They've shown people waiting to cross the border, at least yesterday. I haven't seen those pictures today. But it's difficult to assess what's going on the Palestinian side because the media is under the control of Hamas on that side.
Right. Egypt initially refused to open the border for aid. What do you think made the president change his mind?
Egypt has said pretty much since the outset that it has not closed the border. It's just operationally closed because you cannot get trucks through. Now, as I said, I'm not there on the Palestinian side to see how difficult it is to get trucks through. So I don't know how much that's true or not. We did see some UN fuel trucks going through, or at least video of it. So certainly there are some ways of getting through. President Biden has said that this is a first tranche of aid going in. The agreement is for a first tranche to see who gets that aid. And it's supposed to go to the UN, which is going to distribute it. Now, if the Hamas people seize it or find a way to get control of much of it, then I guess that's going to put a kibosh on any of the future transmission or transports of aid to the Palestinian side.
Aid is now arriving in Egypt to ease the humanitarian suffering, some of them coming in from various governments, some of the latest from Venezuela, as we just announced a few minutes ago. How confident are you that the aid will get to the people it's intended for and that it will not be intercepted by Hamas?
Not very confident because just knowing the situation with journalists on the other side, most of the neutral journalists, and I've been watching this conflict for 15 years since I've been in Egypt since 2008, most of the neutral journalists have been thrown out by Hamas, and they put their own people in to cover what's going on. So if they do that with the journalists, you can just imagine what they do with the other levers of power, which is transmitting aid, and probably many of the UN workers are under their control as well. So, you really can't underestimate the power of the Hamas people to seize the aid. And they were complaining that there was not enough fuel to operate the hospitals for more than 24 hours, I think, and that was like 5 days ago. And we just saw a video on Jazeera TV from Gaza's Shifa hospital, and it looked like it was functioning normally. So clearly they must have some fuel that they're hiding somewhere. So a lot of the information that you hear in the media is not true.
Right. So U.S. President Joe Biden struck a good deal, with Egypt to allow aid into Gaza. And he spoke initially about 20 trucks, but then he mentioned 150. How many do you suppose may be needed per day?
Well, I suspect that the UN has quite a few people in their schools that are taking refuge there. So the UN has a large quantity of people to feed. Now, of course, they probably pre-planned in advance for the last 5 years for an event like this to take place. And so they probably have food stores hidden somewhere, which is why you don't really hear of anyone starving so far. But at the same time, I would imagine that eventually those food stores are going to run out, and eventually people are going to be really, really hungry. I don't think that's happened quite yet. And I think what the quantities are exactly, 2.2 million people, eventually that's a lot of food. I really am not a mathematician, so I can't tell you, but I think that's a lot of food.
Right. Could you elaborate on perhaps the needed infrastructure to allow these, aid trucks through? The U.S. president did say that the roads should be patched to allow the trucks go through. Is there any road work ongoing at this time?
Well, I've been watching correspondence from 3 Arab news channels for most of the day, and I haven't seen anyone talking about or showing any road work going on. So I suspect that I would not be surprised if we'd hear tomorrow that nothing has happened and the trucks are still there. But of course, I can't predict that. I'm not a seer.
Right, Edward, thank you so much for expanding on that conversation and giving us an update from your side of where the aid is coming in. Thank you for coming on the program today.
My pleasure, Joe.
Let's move on. 9 Tanzanians evacuated from Israel have arrived in Dar es Salaam, where they have been received by government officials, family and friends. Tanzania's ambassador to Israel estimates there are still about 350 nationals in Israel awaiting government plans to evacuate them. Many are agricultural students. The embassy added that the search for 2 students who are reportedly missing in the aftermath of the recent Hamas attack on Israeli communities near the Gaza Strip has not turned up any results. Chad has confirmed 1 death from an outbreak of dengue fever, with more than 1,342 suspected cases so far, including 41 that have been confirmed. Well, these figures cover the period since the country declared dengue outbreak in August. Chad's health ministry is currently responding to the outbreak amid concerns of the disease spreading further because of limited capabilities for surveillance and response. The Abeche Health District in the southeastern Wadai province is the epicenter of the outbreak. Dengue is transmitted by mosquitoes and often causes mild flu-like symptoms with no specific treatment. Early detection and management are important for health outcomes. The WHO classes the outbreak as a high national level risk due to favorable environmental conditions for mosquito spread and ongoing humanitarian crisis in the region involving influx of refugees from Sudan. The Turkish energy company Powership has restored power to Guinea-Bissau's capital after shutting off supplies for nearly 2 days. The company had cut off power to Bissau in the early hours of Tuesday over an unpaid bill of at least $15 million, plunging the city into darkness. A Powership spokesperson reported that the company was able to resume operations after receiving a payment from the government. Energy Minister Issouf Balde confirmed $6 million of the $15 million bill was paid. The spokesperson of Powership says the suspension of power supply was necessary because fuel suppliers were no longer able to withstand the delay and had no option but to pause work. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with Kenyan President William Ruto, who is in Beijing for the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. Mr. Xi appreciated the long-standing friendship between China and Kenya, with both countries treating each other as equals. Mr. Ruto, in turn, admitted that Kenya is a great beneficiary of the Belt and Road Initiative and expressed confidence in the 8 steps which will further boost the global impacts of the BRI.
Mr. President, on my own behalf and on behalf of my delegation, I wish to congratulate you for hosting the Third Belt and Road Forum. We are celebrating 10 years of your initiative around Belt and Road infrastructure construction, where Kenya is a great beneficiary. The 8 steps you put forward this morning during your keynote address will vastly enhance the impact of what has been achieved in the last 10 years of the Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima has also met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing for the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. President Xi welcomed Mr. Shettima to China and expressed appreciation to Nigeria for its contribution to the success of the China-Africa Leaders Dialogue held in August in South Africa. On his part, Mr. Shettima congratulated President Xi on the successful hosting of the BRF and hailed the mutual respect in the relationship between China and Nigeria, while expressing his country's willingness to intensify cooperation with China. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative.
And I want to thank you for successfully hosting this Belt and Roads Forum. Why we respect China is that you treat us with respect and dignity. Unlike some people who want to treat us as kindergarten pupils who need to be taught which candy is healthy for them or not. And we are willing to partner with China for the greater glory of our 2 nations and our 2 respective continents.
Back in Nigeria, the plight of the girl child is taking center stage in Oyo State, and that's why this collaboration with our partners convened a General Assembly for schools in the state to discuss the challenges facing the girl child. At the event, our teachers and other professionals, where the girl child activists examined major issues surrounding the growth of the girl child.
This assembly is the second of its kind, and it's aimed at transforming the girl child to access enablers for a brighter future through education. It seeks to engender inclusion at all levels of education for the girl child by giving them a voice. A UNICEF 2021 multiple indicator cluster survey indicates that 16.3% of the girls are out of senior and junior secondary schools across Oyo State. This assembly is calling on the Oyo State government to do more in the education of the girl child to close this gap.
These 100 school girl delegates are communicating to the government and advocating for themselves, and they are saying, help us. Help us to include more teachers in the STEM subjects so we can understand science, technology, engineering, and mathematics better. Girls are saying we want to participate in sports. Unfortunately, in public schools across Oyo State, very few girls have a chance to engage in sporting activities, and that has to stop. Girls are saying we're experiencing bullying, we're experiencing abuse in our schools. These are just a few of some of the issues girls are raising in this General Assembly.
Facilitators at this General Assembly for schoolgirls note that the critical nature of the girl child cannot be overemphasized.
Everybody in the community will continue to understand the significant role of the girl child. When you develop the girl child, you are developing a community, you are developing a generation, you are developing the future of the community, the future of the nation, and indeed the future of the world. So it's a very, very important day.
Some of the participants spoke on the heightened awareness they have been exposed to through the assembly.
I learned that there is more to do when it comes to females' world. There's more we can render down for people to do that. There is more we need to invest when it comes to girls.
A total of 100 students drawn across Oyo schools participated in the assembly. They expected to impact on fellow students at their various schools the importance of an empowered girl child whose voice must be heard. Bukola Oriwo, Channels Television News.
In southern Africa, the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Ukrainian counterpart, President Volodymyr Zelensky, have affirmed their shared desire for a peaceful resolution to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The South African presidency said the two held talks at the request of the Ukrainian president. Mr. Ramaphosa welcomed Mr. Zelensky's commitment to the revival of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and both leaders pledged to continue working together on that. Russia pulled out of the grain initiative brokered by the UN and Turkey in July 2022, which allowed the export of grain from Ukraine ports to global markets. Ukraine has since proposed the establishment of a grain hubs in African ports. Last month, Kenyan President William Ruto said that Ukraine had agreed to set up a grain hub in the port of Mombasa to supply the East African region. Ethiopia, Somalia, and Sudan were among countries that benefited from the Black Sea grain deal. South Africa consumer price inflation has risen from 4.8% in August to 5.4% in September, and this is according to the latest data from Statistics South Africa. This increase is within the South African Reserve Bank's target range of between 3% and 6%.
The CPI increased by 0.6% between August and September, of which 0.4% was contributed by transport. The fuel index increased for a second consecutive month, rising by 7.6% between August and September. The price of inland 95-octane petrol hit a 13-month high of 24.54 Rand in September. After 3 consecutive months in negative territory, annual fuel inflation jumped from negative 11.7% in August to a positive 1.5% in September. After cooling for the past 5 months, the annual rate for food and non-alcoholic beverages inched higher to 8.1% from 8% in August. Meat, fish, oils and fats, fruit and non-alcoholic beverages all registered higher annual rates in September. Lower rates were recorded for bread and cereals, sugar, sweets and desserts, vegetables, and milk, eggs and cheese. Meat prices increased on average by 0.6% between August and September, pushing the annual rate up to 3.8%. Poultry-related products experienced some upward price movements in September as producers started to cull birds in response to the outbreak of avian flu. For example, fresh whole chicken was up 2.2% between August and September. Non-IQF frozen chicken portions increased by 1.9% and eggs by 0.3%. Inflation for bread and cereals eased for a 5th straight month, reaching 9.2% in September. Lower annual rates were recorded for most products in this group. Rice, for example, saw its rate slow to 18.6% from 19.8% in August.
Still in South Africa, all beaches have been closed in the port city of Durban following heavy rains that affected the seawater near the coast. The two-day rains washed logs and other debris into the sea, while shark nets at most beaches were damaged, making beaches unsafe for public use. Residents have, however, been allowed to enjoy other activities along the beach that do not require them to come in contact with seawater. That's our program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.